Hello, hello. Hi, what's up? This is Jessie Drew, aka the Doctor of Psychology to movies, upon movies, especially horror movies. And I am joined, as always, by my co host, Jeffrey Watson Esquire III, attorney and legal representation to all movies, especially horror films. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing well. I'm liking the flow that we're in and the movie selections. And like I said before we started recording, this is actually the first time that I actually saw this particular one. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
Nice. And the movie we are talking about this week is 1987's The Stepfather. And this is our little gift to all you dads out there, all you horror movie loving dads, of course. We're really psyched to talk about this one because for so many reasons that you'll hear in a few minutes and for the rest of the hour, probably. So let's jump in. We are talking about 1987's original movie, The Stepfather. It's the one that the 2009 version with Dylan Walsh and Selena Ward, etc., and cast and crew was based on. But we're OGs. We're OGs here, So we can skip the 2009 remake. We're going to keep it real to the 1987 one. Jeff, you saw the 2009 one. I haven't. Would you say that, which one is gorier? I'm just wondering in terms of the gore factor.
It's a good question. It's been so long since I've seen that one.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to just drop that on you, but
no, it's fine. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe this one.
Because it's like the gore in The Stepfather is here and there. There's a lot of story and a lot of non-gory horror in between. It's described as a psychological horror movie. I don't know if I would go that far. We do get a good amount of, breakdown. Terry O'Quinn plays the titular role of the stepfather. He has various names throughout the film. We're going to stick to either calling him Jerry, because he changes identities, and we'll get to that in a minute, but he changes identities so often. But we'll go with Jerry, calling him Jerry, because that's the name that he uses when he is, with the family that we are with for the most, for the biggest part of the movie. So yeah, Jerry definitely has a couple of breakdowns within the film that are interesting to see, I think, from a psychological point of view. And then from a legal point of view, Jeff, he's got, an interesting story that's based on a true story. I mean, this movie, it was, as they say, loosely based on the true story of John List, who was an OG family annihilator. 1971, murdered his family, did a really meticulous job so that they weren't discovered. The bodies weren't discovered until about a month later. And by that time he changed identities, moved clear across the country, and was out. He was out and then began a new family. Thankfully no kids, but he's, I'm sure that was coming. So then he got busted, but, John List was on the run. Well, I'll say on the run, cause he wasn't really on the run. He was sort of on the run. I don't know. He escaped justice for like 17 or 18 years, that dude was able to like go out and like live a life before he got brought back by America's Most Wanted, because the FBI was just at a loss, and they finally just called the producers and they were like, can you help us out and just throw it up there, see if anything sticks, and lo and behold, the friend of the wife of the new John List, obviously he wasn't going by that name, although I forget what the name was that he was using, a friend of theirs turned him in. She was just like, that looks exactly like him, and this is the second time I've seen a picture in so many years of him where it's related to some sort of crime and people are looking for him, so it can't be a coincidence. um, Never knew what happened to the wife that he was living with. um, I looked her up to see like what happened to John List's second wife, and nothing. I think she just kind of ran. She just wanted to stay out of the spotlight. And at that point in 1971, you could duck out. Nowadays it's so much harder. People like will chase you down and follow you or click pictures with their phones and stuff. But back then you could kind of disappear if you wanted to, and people would respect that. So it like reminds me of like Ted Bundy's wife, when he confessed to all the crimes finally, like at the end, and she just bounced and she was like, nope, and took the daughter, and just people respected that. They like left them alone. People, of course, were tried to like, find them out. And then also there were a lot of people who didn't try to find them out because they were just like, just leave them alone. What they had to go through was horrible enough. Like, yeah. And to this day, it's not widely known. Like where I was gonna say where Jeffrey Dahmer's, where Ted Bundy's daughter is, and like what became of her. But anyway, we're going back to another scumbag.
Yeah.
We will talk about Jerry again, who is based on John List, but the writer said it was loosely based, kind of like the structure. Here's something pretty interesting, though. All right, so the story of John List, he's a family annihilator. He kills his whole family, including his mother, and leaves them all in the house that they lived in. It was kind of like a mansion in New Jersey. He bounces, whatever. They wrote this movie and made The Stepfather before he was brought to justice. And the movie supposed that he had gone on to start another family, and was like living under an assumed identity and blah, 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 and had like a new family. It's exactly what he did in real life. And the writers couldn't have known that. I mean, it's one, of a few assumptions to make about the dude, what he could have done afterwards. But the fact that they kind of pretty much like nailed it was, I don't know, it's kind of spooky. It's a little extra spooky factor added into the movie, I think. But let's get into it. So first off, I want to give a major props to Terry O'Quinn, the gentleman, the actor, the wonder. I mean, he's got to be one of my favorite character actors. I know I say that every episode about whatever character actor is it, but really, I mean, the movies that we pick, the casting puts in these awesome character actors, and Terry O'Quinn's no exception, except in this one, he plays the lead, and he makes the movie. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree, because his ability to switch from this, like, I mean, there are times during the film where you're like, this, you could totally see this guy as like this suburban father, and he's trying the best that he can do, and then there are moments where you're like, holy crap, how did he switch from that to what we're seeing right now? I mean, it's just like a drop of a hat. So he did a phenomenal job in this role.
Yeah, I agree. 100% for Terry O'Quinn. And in reading some of the reviews from back in the day when the movie was released, critics from like all the big critics you think of, New York Times, blah 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 blah, they all said the same thing. They all were like, this movie was like, your typical slasher fare, except for that would be your typical slasher fare, except for the fact that Terry O'Quinn just brings it. He just like brings it, drops it, kicks it in your face, and is like, yo, I'm the stepfather. And you will recognize me because I don't recognize who I am in this place. Where am I in this place? Like he says, and yeah, remember, that's one of the scariest. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
He stops in the middle of everything. He's like, wait a minute, like, who am I here? And that's like, you know, the poster that you see of like his shadow looking in the mirror, and it's like fog. I think that's a great image, by the way, of the bathroom mirror fogged up and it says, who am I here? And you just see like the two Terry Quinns, you know, facing each other. I just think that's great. I think this movie was well done. A little bit too much of that hazy, soft focus filter for my taste. That kind of takes me out and brings me more to like, this is a Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
If they could have just trusted, but this was 1987, so I get it, or 1986, whenever they actually made the film. I get it, you know, and they're going for like a sort of wholesome look to it. The movie is beautiful looking, but if they could have just dropped that like that hazy filter down just a little bit, you know, it would have added a little bit more of a cold reality, I think. But I'll get back to what we were talking about. So we see Terry O'Quinn taking a shower, getting dressed. He is covered initially in the first opening shots. He has this really awkward and like troublesome looking suitcase that he's flinging things out of and throwing things into. And he's got blood on him. He's just sort of taking stock of everything very meticulously and slowly. Takes a shower, gets dressed, he changes his appearance, and he walks down the stairs of this house. And as he leaves, he's like, you know, straightening up some messy toys and straightening up some things on the rug. And you look, and there's three bodies, like, or two or three bodies that are just slashed up to hell, in the living room in all kinds of positions. And there's blood everywhere. And you had seen on the wall that there was pictures of a little girl, you know, clearly his daughter, stepdaughter or daughter, it doesn't really matter, but it's a daughter. And as he walks out the house, you see her little body like right there by the door. That was really intense. I don't know how you reacted to that.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, that's a tough way to start. I mean, it definitely sets the tone for who this person is in terms of what they're capable of. But yeah, it was definitely a tough way to start. That was a hard one to see.
I know. So then he makes his way. He's on a ferry, and he tosses that suitcase out. That suitcase is full of effects from his former life. Excuse me. He steps into this new life across, I don't know, they're in Seattle or something, or like in the Pacific Northwest. So they're just kind of like in that circle. So he's, you know, crossing some body of water, and he steps right into his new life, and he's married to a very nice lady and has a new stepdaughter named Stephanie. We come to find out that this woman had been widowed, that the husband had only died a year before. She met Jerry, as he's known now, and they fell in love pretty hard, and now he's the dad of the house. And the daughter doesn't really care for him. It's kind of danced around a lot at the beginning. We just know that the daughter has been having a hard time at school. We flash to seeing her like in a fist fight in her art class. Which is, I thought was kind of funny because she definitely doesn't seem like the fist fight type to look at her. You know, she's a very skinny little white girl who's really like, good, gee, guys, you know, like, what are you talking about? And you see her like throwing it down, like she's gonna, you know, take someone's eye out. Then basically we just catch their life. The movie basically focuses on their life together. And Jerry is such a G. Willikers throwback to the 1950s, you know, worse than the Brady Bunch, because the Brady Bunch was like, you know, at least they were like goofy. Like he's just He
He's like
keeps. Sorry, go
he's
ahead.
like very Ward Cleaver esque. That's what
Totally.
that's who he reminded me of.
Yeah, totally. And he just like tears up and gets sentimental a lot in this movie, which, as a psychologist to the movies and to villains, clear red flag, that he gets sentimental very quickly and makes these sort of mini speeches at any chance he can get. Like when he's with Stephanie, when they have a barbecue and all of their friends are there, he's like takes a minute to, and it's just like kind of like a thank you for your business and we're all friends and like let's make this a real community and kind of party that they throw. It's like a fall time barbecue, and he just gets up and starts talking about friendship and neighborhoods and family. I mean, this guy's obsessed with the idea of a family. And he gets very sentimental. And then later on, they show him the newspaper article about his own crimes that has popped back up in the news. And he's looking at it. And of course, he's starting to dissociate. He has that look in his eyes like, he's not really there. And they're like, hello. And he's like, yeah, I just think this is so terrible. Like, who would kill their own family? And it's weird because you get this sense like, he really means that, even though he's the killer.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, did you kind of get any sense of his duplicity? Like,
Yes, because in those moments, it's almost as if he's just completely bought into the fact that he's Jerry at this point, and he's forgotten in ways until he sees this what he did previously. And yeah, I mean, you could see him check out as soon as he sees it. You could see the worry, but I don't necessarily think it was worry. I think it was him finally coming back face to face with what he had done. I genuinely believe that he chalked that up to whoever that was before, but it definitely wasn't him, because Jerry's like, how in the world could this terrible person do this to their family? I mean, can you even imagine? Could you imagine doing that? And it's clear to me, at least, that he's just whoever that was that we saw at the beginning is not Jerry.
yeah, totally. I mean, and whew, that's like those moments were like chilling because
Yeah.
Terry O'Quinn brings it, and you see all of this going on behind his eyes, and in like the manner that he's delivering these words to this table of people that are like, Jerry, you okay? Like, hello, like, haven't you heard of this like monstrous crime that everyone in the country knows about? And he's like, no, like, no, I hadn't heard. Like, this is awful, but he doesn't play it like a single note. Anyway, I just go on and on about how he probably deserved an award for this, but whatevs. I did want to, let me finish the whole plot. So basically, Stephanie, the stepdaughter, doesn't trust Jerry as far as she can throw him. And she can't convince anybody, not her therapist, not her best friend, and not her mother, to understand why. She's not very good at articulating why. She's also a teenager, who's like also obviously troubled by the death of her father. We don't know why he died or how he died. We just know he died. And, she's always disappointed that her mom seemingly puts Jerry before her. Which kind of seems that way, but it's not made a point of in the movie. It's just more like her mom's got a new hubby, probably the same amount of attention she'd be getting if it was her actual father, So she gets kicked out of school. That fist fight was like the last straw. And Jerry's like, I'm not worried about it. We'll figure it out. She wants to go to boarding school. She tries to convince everybody to let her. Jerry's like, not going to let that happen because that's breaking up the family, which he feels very strongly about. And they all know that. So the therapist finally kind of comes around to Stephanie and is like, all right, you know what? Like, let's suppose that you're right and that he is a creep. Like, we're going to work this out. I'm going to help you. I'm on your side. I promise you I'm on your side. And she finally feels some validation and some comfort, for a change. So she decides to write to the newspaper to ask for a picture of the family annihilator murderer that they had run the article on. And she says it's for a project at school. She sends away for that and is waiting for the picture, unbeknownst to everybody but her best friend. In the meantime, Jerry won't take the therapist's phone calls. He refuses to talk to him. He refuses to, address any of the issues that they're having as a family. So the therapist cleverly comes up with this idea. He knows Jerry's in real estate. He makes an appointment under an assumed name to meet Jerry at one of these houses for sale. They meet. Jerry catches a sniff that like this guy is also sniffing. Like these two dogs sniffing each other's butts. Like then they know what's up. Like the therapist makes a couple of mistakes in what he says and kind of gives his true nature away. Jerry thinks he's a cop or some reporter that's on to him and kills him with a 2x4. And then I'm sorry. And then sticks his body in his car and like lights the car on fire through the gas tank and pushes it off a cliff. Like it's like overkill, It's just like it's way too much. So, any like detective and fire chief would look at this and be like, this was clearly homicide. Like, nowadays, but we're assuming back then that they didn't know, so it looks like an accident. So Jerry tells Stephanie, hey, your therapist is dead. She starts crying in his arms and he feels like he's finally won her over, and she comes to the conclusion on her own after Jerry intercepts her mail so that the picture, which was of him, from the newspaper, he swaps it for, just some anonymous guy's picture. She sees when, he gives her the mail, she sees it's not Jerry and decides on her own, like, what, maybe like enough is enough. My therapist is dead. It's not Jerry, according to this photo. Maybe I should just try to like be cool with him. And like, he gets her back into school. He convinces them to take her back. So she's like, all right, like, it's all good. Like, let me just kind of like play nice and try to make my life easier. And that's what she does. And they all get along for a little while. Seems like things are pretty clear. Jeff, I wanted to discuss with you some gross moments in this movie. I'm going to break right now to discuss these gross moments because they're so gross that they're making me bite my nails. Gross moment number one. This is in descending order, so I'll say look at it. Least to most.
Come on.
Gross moment. Parents having loud sex. Ew, what the hell? So much so that Stephanie can hear it. And then on top of that, like, the viewers were treated to like seeing the mom and Jerry like, no, thank you. I'm sorry. We are in the point of view of Stephanie interchanging with Jerry in this movie, so we're like in their point of view. So like we're in the point of view of an adolescent girl hearing her mom like and some dude having sex. It's so gross. Okay. Gross moment for the stepfather pulling his wig off in the grody bathroom at the end of the movie, like towards the end of the movie when he changes his disguise.
Yeah.
What the hell? Why did we have to see like the nasty fake skin come up? It was like so gross. And then he puts on that he has like this disguise on, right? With like the nerdy glasses and he's got like, he's balding except for, look, bald is fine, but it's just like, it was a way that they showed him like undoing this wig that no one knew he'd been wearing the whole movie. And then on top of that, he puts on the spirit gum and taps on this pervert mustache. He looks like a perv from the 70s.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was so bad.
if you, it's the exact opposite of detracting attention away from yourself. I mean, that stash and that hat just said, "Hey, look at me. Here I am." Like, I mean, it was, oh, yeah.
And the marbled trench coat that he's wearing, it's like, just why not just be nude under it and just start flashing people? Because that's exactly what he looked like. He looked like a flasher.
Yeah.
So I don't get it, but that was too disgusting. Um, Grossest moment, and it's just going in a different direction. Grossest moment in the movie, my opinion, towards the end of the movie, Stephanie comes home, doesn't realize that Jerry has beat his mom, like with the telephone, and her mom's like falling down the stairs or whatever. She's just kind of like, la da 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 da, it's just a normal day. I'm going upstairs to take a shower. Stephanie's like 16 or something like that. She's like a young girl and she's made to act like a young girl. I doubt that the actress was that young. She looks a little bit older, but she was made to behave, dress, talk, look, everything like a young 16-year-old girl. Like I would have even pegged her at like 15 or 14 by the way that she was acting. And then all of a sudden, we see her undressing in the bathroom, like in an almost sultry way, and we see her naked body. And I'm like, you know what? That's really disgusting. Like, that's not even like us joking disgusting. That's full out inappropriate. I wrote in my notes, like, massively inappropriate, if you were here for for some of that, you got it with the parents having sex. The mom was naked. You didn't really see like, anything too much like in terms of nudity, but you saw you saw them having sex. Okay, good for you. You got your sex scene. Okay, bye. But not a young girl. I don't know. So those were my gross moments for the movie. I just wanted to throw that in there um, before I forgot about them. So Stephanie's like, okay, we're gonna get along, whatever. This is my lot in life, and it's all good until she goes out, seemingly after Thanksgiving. She meets up with like a group of kids. They're all having fun. She's leaving. She runs into this boy from the neighborhood that she's friends with, that they've been kind of flirting with each other a little bit. And tonight's the night that they're flirting a lot with each other. And it's very innocent. It's like really, it's very like corny even, they have like these corny little back and forths and stuff. So she like takes a ride with him on his moped to go back home. And he walks her to the door, and there's a very sweet scene where she and he, because they're both young, like they want to kiss each other, but they're way too shy to do it. And he's kind of struggling with like, okay, I know I have to kiss her, but I'm scared to kiss her. And what if she doesn't want to kiss me? And it's played out for like a little while. So then they're finally kissing, and it's very like, I have a crush on you, and I'm young. And freaking Jerry, Jerry pops out of the door, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? Oh my God, get off of her. I mean, this boy is like barely kissing this girl, and the mother comes out and is like, Jerry, what the hell is the matter with you? And he was like, this guy was just trying to rape Stephanie. I was like, what?
Like, the dude probably didn't even use tongue to kiss her.
No, he was like,
yeah, I mean, he jumped from a smooch to this dude kind of, and I mean, it's just like, what in the world? I mean, granted, I have a daughter,
right,
and I can go ahead and tell you now, she's young. In my eyes, she will always be young. So whenever she starts dating, me and whoever she dates are going to have an issue. Like I will say, like
you got your baseball bat ready.
I mean, yeah, I'm
For
ready.
the,
Yeah,
like the
I'm,
whole like thumping it on your hand, like, oh, so you're taking my daughter out, huh? Like,
like I'm gonna do the whole, whatever you do to my daughter, I'm gonna do to you. So have fun tonight. Um, so I get the being protective, but it's like, dude, come on, that's just you went from that to making a huge scene, and now you've got your wife and your stepdaughter looking at you like, what in the world are you doing? And that's when it starts to unravel.
Yeah. Well, and then but first the mom has to put her little 2 cents into the jar, which isn't fun. And she's just like, this is your father now. Like this, she doesn't say now. I think she just says, this is your father and you're going to respect what he says. And I was like, this is no time, lady, to be like, bringing that to the table. Like, let's just take one step at a time, and the boy runs off and Stephanie runs off. They don't run off together. They just run, like, he runs off. He's like, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I didn't just try to rape anybody. I'm out, and like leaves. And then they all are like yelling at each other, and the mother drops the whole "this is your dad," and she's just like, I'm out of here. Goodbye. And then Jerry's like, I can't believe that you're like defending this boy, because the mother's like, he's just a kid in the neighborhood. I've known
Right.
him longer than I've known you. And that when she says that, he's like, goodbye. Yep. And, he runs off too. What a funny scene, in my opinion. But anyway, so, so then they're back at odds again. Everybody's at odds. And that's pretty much when everything falls apart, Stephanie just doesn't feel comfortable with him again. He starts taking trips. He leaves his job at the realty place. He starts taking trips across this body of water again and starts using a disguise. And he has set up an appointment for like a job interview under a new name and this new disguise. He, rents this house. And he starts kind of, cozying up to the widow that lives next door. And it's all going to start all over again. And that if he's setting a new life up for himself, then it's because he's going to decimate the one that he currently has. So all this meantime, like, there's kind of like this B plot of the brother of the original wife who was murdered, is kind of like hot to get revenge on Jerry. I forget what his name was in the previous life, where he, his name like Bob or something like that. I forget, or Jim or whatever.
Jim, I believe.
So basically Jerry's ex-brother-in-law, the brother of the sister that, that was murdered, is hot on his trail. He's trying to use the reporter.
Henry.
He is trying to use reporters and stuff and the newspapers to, kind of like draw him out again. He wants to catch up with him, etc. And he is kind of like close on his trail when like he comes home, when Jerry comes home from one of these trips across the sound, his wife is like, we need to talk about, like what's been going on. And he is like, oh, nothing's going on or whatever. And she's like, yes, something's going on, blah, blah, blah. Why'd you leave your job? And she kind of wants to believe like what, he's the bill of goods he's trying to sell her, because she wants to be happy. She wants, poor thing, she wants to believe that her husband is like, what she thinks she is, and not a maniac who would randomly quit his job and then not tell her and still come home at the same time that he would if he had the job, So I wonder too if like at that point she's kind of thinking like maybe Stephanie's right, like maybe something really is off, but obviously she doesn't want to admit it, but I wonder if that's kind of running through her head too. And at that point, he slips up and uses a wrong name. And he then says very creepily, like, wait, who am I here? Like he's so far gone with all of the aliases and disguises and plans and murders that he's just flat out dissociating and being like, where am I? Like, where am I? What am I doing here? You know, it's one of the times in the movies that we do get like an honest to goodness glimpse of like his psychology, and something that like probably would happen in real life.
Mhm.
You know, somebody flat out dissociating and just not knowing who they were or where they were. Um, and then he's like, oh, okay. And then he just like beats her with like the telephone.
Yeah,
Yeah. And she's like, what are you doing? You know, and he's like, oh, sorry. You know, just like it has to like, it's going to have to be this way, maybe a little sooner than he had expected, you know. Um, and so then we fast forward to Stephanie getting into the shower and he follows her up. He also, his ex brother in law shows up at the doorstep and he is like, oh, hey, Jim, how's it going? And he's like, Henry, how are you? Like, and he takes out a gun to, you know, to get vengeance for his sister who was murdered, but he's too slow. You know, he's too slow because Jerry's already beat him to the punch. He takes this, you know, knife that he's been carrying around with him and stabs this poor dude to death. Let me ask you thoughts on that murder.
I was very mad at the brother because it's like obviously you know that this is where he is. And the saying goes, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Dude, you know he's gonna be here. You know he lives here. You gotta be ready for it. I mean, I to me, I was that death made me mad because it's like I really wanted to see some vengeance for what happened, but at the same time, it's like in a lot of cases, Jerry was just way ahead of people. So of course he did this because of course he knew at some point he was going to come after him, and when he did, he was prepared. So yeah.
This guy had been climbing this mountain with his tools, with like a pickaxe, you know, like a rock climber, you know, a
Mhm.
mountain climber. He had been like really going against all odds. It was difficult. This guy was like sleeping in his car at times. He was, you know, devastated. Like, you know, he's coming from a place of grief and then fury, you know, and it's like, don't then let us see him fall off the mountain and just die. You know, come on. Like, I don't know. I was also angry at that death. It didn't sit well with me. I was like, let this guy have some other ending, whatever it is, you know, whether he then accidentally shoots himself or something, you know what I mean? But like, let him
Also,
have a hand in like, and taking Jerry down at least. Let him have a hand in it. He just gets there and it's like, it's so simple how Jerry just stabs him in the stomach a couple of times, like and then like twists the knife, and he drops to the floor and he's just dead. So much so that you're like, that I was like, you know, is this a joke? Like this can't just he can't just be like dead just like that. Like he's gonna. I had
back up.
right. This was the second time I've seen this movie. Granted, the first time was years ago, but like in my head I was like, oh, but he gets, I think I remember him getting back up, you know, like later, and he helps them, you know, like at some, like he'll probably die but he helps them at some moment get Jerry, you know. And he doesn't, he's just dead. Like he's just gone after all of that. It just goes for nothing. That's why I didn't really talk about the B plot like with him too much, because it's kind of it ends up going nowhere because the guy just dies, like, you know, as soon as he sees him. So anyway, um finally, Stephanie understands that he's trying to kill her, and that he's hurt her mother, and just she's onto him. She's been onto him for a while. It just that nobody would believe her, and she kept getting in trouble for like all of her actions whenever she'd mention, even just mention how creepy he was. But she knew, she saw him in the basement that time, like during the party, that barbecue party, that like he was like, oh, I just love my wholesome life and all of you and my family and my daughter, and she saw him downstairs, like spitting angry and talking to himself and like, you know, reliving like traumas he'd faced and like out loud, you know. Um, Almost like he had multiple personalities, which would make sense since he dissociates, and it's actually called dissociative identity disorder. It's not called multiple personalities disorder, although it is a controversial diagnosis. A lot of people still argue that it's not real. I don't know. I kind of tend to fall on our minds are so complex, and the evils that we visit upon each other are also so complex and awful that when the two clash, lots of freaky, weird things happen with our minds. And there's also ways to protect ourselves so that we can keep going. So I'm not here to, argue against DID, as people refer to it as. But yeah, she sees him having these like tormented arguments and stuff with himself, acting out roles. And she knows already that he is completely, crazy. And they go through this whole cat and mouse sequence where he's trying to kill her and she won't have it. And she's, running for her life. Good for her. She's the final girl. Um, and they have this one moment where the mother has pulled herself up, and gets the drop on Jerry from behind with the gun. She's not a good shot, obviously. She's probably never even shot a gun before, but close enough range that she shoots Jerry in the leg and in the arm or whatever, and slows him down because he's trying to make his way back to Stephanie, and she's kind of knocked out. And then they both fight for the knife. She gets it. She stabs him, and stabs him in the heart. And he just looks at her and says, I love you. As he falls down the stairs to his death. And that is a wrap. So, okay, there are a few bags to unpack. This movie, though, is pretty tidy.
Yeah.
I think I would say that. Legal counselor, would you agree?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there are a couple things that I was just like, I wanted a little more. I mean, I know we got that scene where he's, down in the shop and he's, just beside himself, but I wanted a little more.
Mm.
More about him and why. Like, why is he this way? I wanted to know a little bit more. And Stephanie, like, I wanted to know. It was obvious to me that Stephanie had a vibe about him from the start. Why didn't people believe Stephanie? I mean, we can say it was because she was a teenager and all that stuff, but there's got to be something deeper as to why people didn't believe her. Because, I mean, if you got a kid and they say something, I mean, maybe once or twice, it's like, okay, well, whatever. But if they are beating that drum loud enough as she was, it's like, okay, maybe we need to look into this. And I mean, yeah, the therapist did, and it met his demise. But I mean, my goodness, it was just like she's basically saying, hey, this dude there's something wrong. There's something not right with this guy. Why won't anyone believe me? And so that, that was that. And then obviously the brother, like, like you said, the B plot to the movie, it added suspense in places, which was good, but there was really no payoff with it. I mean,
Yeah.
you get this encounter, but there's no real satisfaction from having those two come face to face.
Lazy writing.
Yeah, I mean, do something. something. It could have been the three of them together at the end, making sure they take him down. But we didn't even get that. So yeah,
Yeah, lazy writing. If
yeah,
you're gonna have the brother in it, then he's in it. You know what I mean? He's driving like a this subplot. That's basically him and Stephanie working together without realizing it, to like bring Jerry down and to expose him, and then like you said, like have him help them, or then afterwards be like, oh hey, I'm Jim, like he murdered my family, like whatever, you know what I mean? And then they all like, and then like there's a scene where they're waving goodbye to him and he's on his way back to Detroit or wherever he's from, like, but yeah, there's just lazy writing. That was a bummer. I thought when I said it was kind of like neat, just like I feel like how he like packed up those like suitcases and stuff, and then like dumped them in the water, et cetera, et cetera. The movie kind of covered its butt, like in a lot of ways. Like if we're having a scene, it was for this purpose, and we got this out of it, and now it's over and done.
yeah.
The audience was clear as to what they were getting from that scene. So I liked that about this movie, actually. There wasn't it was very direct, and it's good, I think, because the basic plot of it, the basic story of it was so sinister.
Yeah.
This was like before Family Annihilator was even a term. Um, so yeah. So I don't know. I think, if it's okay with you, I think we're ready to rate this. I
Let's
think we're ready to, yeah. So on our show, Jeff and I rate each movie that we talk about in terms of headstones. So one being the lowest, being like a, and then five being a ta-da, highest rating you could get. And then we also do would you get a tattoo of, where we talk about would you get a tattoo of the movie that we just discussed. Sort of like another basis of rating the movie. So Jeff, for this week's film, The Stepfather, what would you rate it? How many headstones would you give?
I would give it a middle of the pack 3.
Okay. How
Uh,
come?
I like the movie. I thought it was well done. There were a few things that I wish had been done a little bit different, like as in the story with the brother. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I wish that would have gone a little bit differently. And like you brought up the gross moment. I mean, honestly, I would have given this film a 4 had it not been for the fact that we get who we assume to be, and we're told is a 16-year-old girl
Yeah.
who's in high school, and we see her in this light, and it's like, I don't care what year it was, I don't care how different things were back then. Full stop.
No.
I don't need to see that. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are the reasons why I bumped it down 2 or 3, and I would not get any tattoos of the stepfather.
Fair
What
enough.
What about you? What are your ratings?
I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 3.5, because of Terry O'Quinn, and because um, there aren't too many movies like this where we get the whole like changing personalities, changing identities, paired with the psychopathic, um, murderous, you know, spree that we get with this movie. Like kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'm probably forgetting like half the movies I've seen that are exactly like this, but I feel like this movie, especially like I'm the child of a divorce. I've had two stepfathers. Like I just, um I don't know. I just kind of was like, I can relate to this. I was a grumpy and upset teenage girl who just missed her father, and wanted him to come back. You know what I mean? And I had to deal with like, a, you know, a couple of a couple a holes, and So I guess because I could kind of relate to this, and yeah, and I would not get anything from the stepfather tattooed. Although that whole like "who am I here" thing, that's pretty creepy. That's pretty badass.
That's
If I
pretty.
was gonna get anything, I would get that. But that's
That's,
also really terrifying. That's why I like it, you know. But yeah, so all right, friends. We hope that we have inspired you in some small way to maybe check out the OG Stepfather movie. We also want to wish all the dads out there, including our own Jeffrey Watson Esquire the Third, Dad Supreme, my own husband, my Lewis, the other Dad Supreme, and all the dads out there who might be listening. I know our friend Ansel does. Ansel, happy Father's Day. Just happy Father's Day. You know, you guys deserve it. I hope you have a wonderful time. And we hope that you will join us next week. I am not going to tell you what we have picked out. Maybe we will tease it on Twitter. Get at us. All our information is on the screen. Also, movies to be murdered by at gmail.com for those of you who are listening on podcasts. And thank you, as always, for checking us out. We love you guys. Bye.
Peace out.
Game over.